Hey everyone, I really want to take a few minutes and walk through a topic that when I first discovered this, I found it to be amazing, and that's good, fast, and cheap. The ideal trifecta that is rarely stumbled upon and not something that persists, and why it's unlikely to see something that would be good, fast, and cheap. Now, before we get into the details of that, though, I just want to remind you to, hey, take a moment, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, and consider signing up for our newsletter down at the link below. We'd love to have you tuning in on a regular basis. So, why is good, fast, and cheap something that's difficult to have stick around? Well, in reality, the problem is that we all want something to be good, fast, and cheap, right? Who doesn't? I love the idea of something good, fast, and cheap, especially the cheap part. Who doesn't love the idea of getting a great deal? It's good, it's fast, and man, you don't really have to pay anything for it. What's not to love? Well, that kind of starts to become the problem. What's not to love? Basic economic principles start to fall into play if we're working with a business, whether that could be a contractor, could be a service professional, someone who's licensed, maybe they're an attorney or an accountant or even a medical professional. Could be your electrician, your plumber, your mechanic down the road. Any of these sort of businesses that are wanting to do well are seeking, at least initially, I think, to be good, fast, and cheap. That's where we're going to get lots of demand. But as that demand builds, what starts to become difficult is to be able to achieve all three of those, and something needs to give. It becomes only two out of the three is achievable, not three out of the three. And so maybe in the early stages of a business, you'll see it as good, fast, and cheap. But if they stay that way, what is going to happen is it's good and cheap, but it's no longer fast. That business becomes overtaken with work, and the response time swags, and you're going to you pay for it in waiting. It's going to take now a longer and longer time for things to get done. It could be weeks, months, perhaps even years before someone gets around to you. So yeah, it's good and cheap, but it's not going to be fast. And then there starts to be a little bit of a question or concern that if something continues to say good and cheap, but not fast, there's really a good possibility that that business is overworking itself or overworking its team members, its staff, which if that stays long enough and we get into an issue of burnout, we may even start to sacrifice the quality of the work. It just starts to not be good either any longer. But hopefully the business is taking good care for itself, and quality is a matter of concern. And so the issue here is it's just not fast any longer. It's good and cheap, just not fast any longer. But you might be like, well, I want it to be fast, right? So like, I don't want to sit around and wait for it. I'm not willing to pay for it in my time of waiting. You can still get something then that's good. But if it's not, if you want it as good and fast, what's going to take place is it won't be cheap. Can't be cheap. And naturally enough, any business that starts to see itself become overworked, the right business response to that is to raise your prices. Like that's what you do. And it's the way to kind of push some of that business back and not to be as busy and not to be as overworked, and only to make more money for the work that you're doing. So if something is really good, it will eventually start to be good and hopefully fast. It kind of needs to do that if it's going to, I think, continue to deliver a good service, but it's not going to be cheap any longer. And so that's if you want it good and fast, don't expect it to be inexpensive. And then lastly, you could be like, well, maybe it doesn't need to be good. You have to decide what it is that you wouldn't want to be good, but you could still get something that's fast and cheap. And hey, you're hitting on both of those. It's fast and cheap, but you have, effectively fast food, right? I mean, that's the service model that gets drummed up there. And that's not the bad. I like fast food, I think, just as much as the next person, the next guy or gal. But let's not kid ourselves. No libel intended with this, but like, fast food is fast food, right? We're not going here because we think it's the best that type of burger, as an example, or taco, or what, chicken nugget, that it's the very best that we can get for ourselves. It's fast and it's cheap, or at least it should be relatively inexpensive, should be cheaper than the option. Now, the truth is our current economy, I don't know how much that's actually true. It seems like fast food is just as expensive as sitting down to eat anymore. So perhaps, if that's what it is, then maybe we should just pay a little more and avoid this notion of cheapness, right? Are we really getting our money's worth? But good, fast, and cheap. Wanted to share this with you. We come across this. I have found this just to be helpful in appreciating and working with other businesses. It's not the easiest, as a business grows and expands and develops and gets better, to see the price for that product, that service increase in time. But it is what naturally needs to happen in order for that business continue to do what it can to do its job well, especially for it to be good and fast, which is, I think, of the three, probably what people want the most. Although you get to decide, uh, decide of the three, which ones do you want the most. But most people, I would say, they want that good and fast service, especially if they can afford it. But it's naturally not going to stay inexpensive. It can't. The business will run itself into the ground. So as you're considering your options, whether you're working again with whoever, be aware that if something is good and cheap, it's not going to be fast. And if you want it to be good and fast, it's not going to be cheap. And be wary of kind of pushing for that, having cheap be the deciding factor of this, because you're going to start to call into question then the quality of the service. Something could still be cheap and it can be fast, but it's not going to be good. Like, it just won't be. And maybe there's something that you're okay. You're okay with the fact that it's not good. You think that's okay for you. Again, fast food. Maybe you're okay that this isn't the best possible, most nutritious meal for me. I just need a meal tonight. No harm in that, but you need to decide which things, as you consider your options in the marketplace, are you willing to say, what, this doesn't have to be the very best. I'm okay for it to be less than good. But if good is important, your only other two options are, well, am I willing to give up on it being fast, or am I willing to give up on it being cheap? But you're not going to be able to get all three of those together. Pretty unlikely. Anyhow, found this to be incredibly important as I have been working in, as a service professional, but also interacting and working with other service professionals and respecting those other service professionals. But hey, if I've come across something that's good, fast, and cheap, I'll count my lucky stars and be appreciative for it. But I know for sure it's not going to be all three of those for very long, because it's not what happens. It can't really happen. It's pretty unlikely. In fact, you're just lucky. You're lucky if it is that you find something good, fast, and cheap. Recognize that that's not going to be in play for a very long time, because quite frankly, it can't, as hopefully I've demonstrated. Okay, hope you found this to be enormously valuable. Please, again, sign up for our newsletter, follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, and consider following us here on the YouTube channel. We'd love to have you. Until next time, take care.